Hello and welcome to another interview with one of our amazing course graduates. So I am here today with Krastina Stevenson. So thank you so much for joining me and giving me your time. So Christina is now a full-time yoga teacher, having made the transition from a corporate career to full-time yoga teacher. And she's managed to do this within a relatively short time frame, because if I'm right, you've been teaching for what, 2 or 3 years at this point? Wonderful. So I suppose the thing to start with is, which is a question I always start with really, is what was it that drew you into becoming a specialist teacher in yoga for cancer?
Yes, thank you, Jenny, and thank you for this nice introduction, and thank you for having me here. Um, so I was diagnosed with breast cancer in March 2022, and this was just after I turned 40. And I had just completed my yoga teacher training. I was trained in just a basic vinyasa training. Um, so this has really, in a way, changed my life, this diagnosis, and in the way that I actually approached everything from there. And and that's what got me into coming in deeper into the knowledge of how to teach yoga for cancer. As this was a very unexpected diagnosis for me, and it had impacted majorly my life. Like you mentioned, I have transitioned recently to a full-time yoga teacher, and that has happened in that short period of time. So after my diagnosis, I went through the treatment and everything else that comes with it. So I really wanted to give back um, to the world, I guess, because I am a survivor and managed to really get through the diagnosis, and I am here. So I really wanted to deepen my knowledge, understand a little bit more how to um, perhaps teach people who have gone through a similar diagnosis. And I know it's a space that needs a little bit more. I think we need more teachers that can offer this, and I'm glad that I took that journey onwards. So this is what got me
Yeah.
into teaching yoga for cancer.
Yeah, and it's not an uncommon story from my experience. I think every time that I run the course, there's usually at least one teacher on there who has their own diagnosis, and that's been the spur for them to specialize in this area because they realize how much it's really needed. And I guess a little on the spot question for you is, in terms of when you were experiencing your own treatment and kind of in the middle of all that mayhem, I'm assuming like yoga was an important thing for you. And what was it that, or did anything change in your practice, or what was it that you wanted from a teacher at that time in your life? Was there something different to normal for you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, having a cancer diagnosis and then going through all the treatments it has a really holistic impact on anybody.
Mm.
And I feel like your not just your body, but your emotions, your mind, everything is challenged, and you're really taking out of your normal day-to-day life and even out of your comfort zone. So I remember I had a really, really strong practice when I
Mm.
got diagnosed. In fact, I was practicing when I had the call, when they told me that, there's something that I have to be looked at. So after I had my surgery, I don't know how much people are familiar with that, but particularly in breast cancer, it is very likely that you'll get lymph node removal under your armpit. So this is where um, I think for me that was the biggest challenge because I had to recover my shoulder mobility. I had to recover all of these movements, which are essential for a very strong um, yoga practice. So I was really up and upside down, and it was very very strong for me. And I found that it was really hard to not being able to do that. It was really hard to not being able to move my underarm or my arm entirely to find that movement above my head, to reach arms above your head, something which is so simple and very basic in life. So, to your point, I did need something more specialized in order to do that. So I was looking for practices that would be suitable for this kind of place where I was at. And to be honest, there isn't that much out there. There isn't. It is
Mm,
hard to find practices that allow you to gradually regain that mobility, gradually come to a place where you feel comfortable that you can actually even come back to a much more normal, let's say, space that you have. Maybe you will never regain the same mobility, and I feel like sometimes I get this kind of tension, but at least to come to something that feels a little bit more natural.
yeah.
So yes, to your point, it does. You do need to have some special attention to that. And in order to be healthy, but also not injure yourself, you have to
Mhm.
take the care for that. And I think this is where I needed a different perspective. And that is why it's not the same as you can join any yoga class. You do have to get more specialized attention.
Yeah, and I think what I hear back from people who come to classes at Maggie's is there's generally kind of two main category of experience that people have when they've tried going to a general class is either the teacher has the intention to be really inclusive and really kind. It's like, yes, come on in and we'll do what we can for you, and then it's just really not suitable and they say, I can't, this isn't the right class for me, they don't really understand my needs, and so that's not appropriate. Or they've gone to classes and the teacher with a good level of integrity and maybe with a healthy dose of fear as well has just said, or like I don't know about cancer, I just know, like I don't want to injure you, I don't know what to do, I'm really sorry, but to be safe. And in both cases somebody doesn't have a class they can go to.
Exactly. Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
finding that middle ground of people who know how to adapt and who know the differences between different levels of cancer and treatment. And I'm sure you've experienced yourself and maybe even seen around hospitals or clinics you've been to, the cancer is a huge word that covers so much that you can have people in very different physical and mental places and it's all under that umbrella. So yeah, sometimes that feeling of where people might think all of it is terrifying and dangerous, and it's like, well, if you know more then you would know that actually in this instance it's fine for someone to join in, but in this instance maybe not so much. And yeah, having that discernment I think is really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And through the training that I attended, that is specifically for cancer that you have led, Jenny, I learned a lot, and I feel that the course really influenced my teaching style. It's not just,
Mm.
you know, um, finding the right balance, but also really understanding what you were saying, how you can include students maybe in a more general class, but equally how you can really diversify, specialize in an area that they need your help the most. And I feel that I am much more aware and much more mindful teacher, if that makes sense. It just really helped me realize that we all have different needs, we all have different bodies, and um, knowing all of the different things that we've discussed with you in terms of how we approach people with cancer has really opened my mind for a lot of the practices I teach today. And I don't want to sound as if other teachers are not. I'm just saying that it does give you that perspective. It does give you that understanding that there are different needs, and we can help people who need us in that space. So,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, absolutely. And, there's so many different ways of adapting classes. And actually, you sort of answered what was going to be my next question in a way, because I'm aware that you come from this background of your own practice and training being a very strong vinyasa flow. And
Mhm.
although that can be an amazing practice for a lot of people, I think certainly during cancer treatment, there's probably for a lot of people, that's not going to be the most appropriate kind of jumping through chaturanga kind of after
Definitely
breast
not.
surgery and on chemo, almost like not going to be yeah, necessarily the most useful or comfortable thing for everybody. So yeah, how is your teaching now? Do you feel like you've kind of got a fusion style, or do you have like a more pure vinyasa class for some people and then more of a yoga for cancer class for others? Or I don't know. I suppose because from my experience, I feel over the years, my general style, whoever I'm teaching, has evolved a lot. I'm where I've been taught by different teachers and drawn different influences, and you kind of weave your own kind of yoga mat, as it were, with different styles. So, where are you
Yeah,
at with that right now?
yeah, absolutely. You said it really nicely that I weave in a lot of the learnings from different teachers, and um, I've gone through a lot of training for my continuous development. So I have added on different styles, if you will, on top of my vinyasa training. So I train to teach mandala flow, which is a very creative flow, really nice kind of rounded practice. We move around the mat 360 degrees, and we work with a specific element. Um, so that is a really nice add-on. I also train to teach yin. So I teach yin classes, which I love teaching, and I love being taught yin or,
Yeah.
self-practice. I have rediscovered how much a yin practice is really beneficial for your body, for your mind. And then I did the Yoga for Cancer course, which kind of rounded everything up for me because, like I said, I really found this influence into my teaching as becoming a lot more aware and really finding the right balance between the very strong practice, but also something that offers you a softer experience, which doesn't necessarily mean weak. It just means
Mm.
it gives you a different feeling in your body, in your mind. And this is what I try to teach my students. I am a very intuitive teacher, so I never stick to a specific routine. Those of my students that have come to classes, they know that I teach every time a different sequence. And sometimes I just judge by the audience. I judge by it's almost like I can smell the environment. I have the feel for it when I see their faces. I do generally stick to what the class describes as to be, particularly where I work with other with studios. For instance, I teach for more yoga studios, which are across London. So I do stick to the description of the class, and I would teach a strong vinyasa flow, but I still weave in this kind of mindful moments where we really need to take care of that part in us that is not necessarily always very strong, because we need the balance. We always need balance in yoga and generally in life. So this is kind of my premise of teaching. Um, I'm also currently being trained on Pilates, so I'm taking a Pilates training with more yoga. It's an internal training, but it gives me a different perspective. So it's more about strength and core, which is really good. So I will take the learnings from that as well. So I could say, Jenny, that I am quite uh, a teacher that takes on board, and I like to learn from different teachers, and I always respect what they have taught me, and try to find the right balance for my students. So if you come to my classes, you will have an experience that is holistic and well-rounded.
Yeah, and uniquely you. And I think this is something that I always try and encourage teachers to find for themselves, which is why I don't sort of have a trademarked style thing. Like I don't want people coming out of the course like cookie cutter teachers. I want people to really connect with their intuition, draw on all the knowledge base they have, and then know with the extra knowledge they have around the yoga for cancer, how you put together a class that is right for the people who are in front of you. And it sounds
Exactly.
like, you're really in that zone now of, like you say, kind of smelling the atmosphere in the room, and you kind of get a sense of, oh, okay, I feel the energy, I see their faces, like this is what we need for today. And then next week it could be something completely different depending on what people bring in. um
Yeah, absolutely. And just from a very kind of pragmatic perspective, I do teach also online. I have a vinyasa class, which is, describing what it is. And when people join, they will experience that. And then separately, I do offer specific yoga for cancer classes online at the moment, which also are targeted towards the audience of people who are, either recovering or on treatment for cancer. And this will be a different experience than the vinyasa class, for instance. So just
yeah.
to give a perspective on that as well.
So yeah, tell me a little bit more about those classes. Are these things that you set up yourself, or is it through an organization?
Um, Both, yes, yes, in both cases, yes. So I've had my online offering for a while, but I was doing it more in a kind of offline friendly manner, just saying to people I'm teaching a class and people who know me could join the class. I have a WhatsApp group, which is a community, yoga community, where I had offered this before. I also teach a community class, which is a face-to-face class in my local community in Rotherhithe, where I live, in southeast London. And I have promoted the online classes there as well. I also try to kind of spread the word wherever I
Mm.
go, from my previous corporate world work. Also, I sing in a big London choir, so I have promoted my classes there as well. And I do have people that have joined, which is really nice. But then I started working with a platform which is called Live Yoga Teachers. and it's basically a platform that offers online classes. There's lots of teachers on there, and everyone has a different style. And it's basically like it's like a domain where people can create their profile, and then they can basically create classes and offer classes online. And this is the platform I'm using at the moment. So I decided to transition into something a bit more public, if you will.
Yeah.
So that allows me to reach also audience that is wider than just my immediate friends and network.
And so the yoga for cancer class that you do, is that open to anyone who has a diagnosis, or is it a little bit more niche than that?
It's basically people who are 6 weeks past their surgery, if they had a surgery, and they could be in active treatment at the moment or post-treatment and
Mm,
recovering from that. So this is basically the disclaimer in the
yeah.
class. But yes, it is open for for the audience, and the platform that I'm using, they also have all of these different specialized classes. For instance, there are specialized classes for people who surfboard, or for runners, or it does enable you to offer classes that are in a more niche environment, or a niche audience, if you will. So that's a good thing. Hmm.
Yeah, so just really trying to grow in all different directions. I just wanted to kind of circle back a little bit,
Hmm.
because it's lovely to let conversations meander. But one of the things I wanted to sort of ask about on reflection is, because I think it was quite close after you had finished your treatment that you were then starting the course. Um,
Hmm.
and I suppose just for other people listening or watching who might be in a similar situation, like they've had their own diagnosis and they want to specialize in this, and they might be feeling, I don't know, like unsure of how comfortable it is to be on a course when it's a subject that's so close to home. And obviously, it's individual for everybody. But what was your experience like, kind of going over some of that subject matter in quite a lot of detail, and sort of going over all the side effects of the treatment and how that might affect people? And, how was that for you?
Yeah, thank you for that question. As anyone, I presume it is quite emotional, and particularly for me, I'm a very emotional person, and I do um I do go over and over about, what has happened in my treatment and everything else. But I, in fact, think that it has helped me to be on the course and to go through all of that information, because it has clarified a lot of things that I have
Mm,
experienced, and in a way validated that what I was experiencing wasn't just me
mm,
or something, unusual. It was part of what you go through in a diagnosis. So it has helped me to realize some of the things that I've been going through, but also understand a little bit more about other things that could happen, and how does that look like in the general population of people who have cancer. Because I'm very bad with numbers, but I know that there is it every other person, every second person, or something like that, that gets a cancer diagnosis. So it's not something that is way away from our environment. It's
mm,
there, and people are affected. So I think going through the course has really helped me realize that there's lots of people who go through the same thing, and there's many different ways that people experience cancer, and it has just opened my eyes, and made me
mm.
realize a lot more of what does that mean. So I felt like the course was really inclusive. The people who are on the course were very open to talk, but also to kind of give you that welcoming and really almost it felt almost like a virtual hug to have everybody and discuss. And I've learned a lot from all of these people who are on the course who weren't necessarily going through a cancer diagnosis, but they have worked with people who had it, and it was really great to hear and learn more from them as well, and all the different tools and ideas and practices that I could potentially experience myself and have uh, the knowledge and the experience from a personal perspective, but also how I can translate that as well into my teaching. So yeah, I
Mm.
think for anyone who is wondering, I would strongly recommend just to try and see what could that bring to them. And I mean, worst case scenario is just another network of people that you can really relate to. And I love how we still have our WhatsApp group and we share experiences, we share different ideas. So yeah, so it has been a really good experience for me, and I didn't feel at any point of time, um, how can I say, sad or anything like that.
Mm.
It was more of a yes, others have been through this, and yes, it's a journey.
Yeah, that's really, well, it's lovely to hear because it's always my intention to make it a really supportive environment because I know it brings in people who've had all different kind of experiences from their own diagnosis or to a bereavement or, sometimes there's big stuff that people are coming with. Um, but it's interesting in a way that your experience, I think, also reflects how it is for a lot of people who are thinking about joining, like just coming to a yoga for cancer class. And a lot of the benefit that they get from having a specialist class is the validation, is being heard and being told, oh, by the way, it's really normal to have this experience. It's
Yeah,
really
exactly.
it's really normal. Like everyone gets anxiety around appointments. Everybody has fatigue. Everybody at some point is going to feel a bit of anger or, all of those things. And like you say, just not to feel alone with it and think, oh, it's not just me. This is part of normal for this phase of life. And actually, here's a bunch of other people who get it.
Yeah,
And yeah, just
absolutely.
yeah, to have your experience validated. So on top of everything else, you're not also thinking, why am I not coping better? Or I should
Yeah,
be like this. And, all of these other kind of beliefs that might come in, which just adds to the emotional burden of the whole thing. So, yeah.
absolutely. And I actually found it really inspiring, because I was also thinking, okay, with all of this experience and knowledge, I can now help this person and this person. There were
Mm.
like people that came into my mind, including my dad, who went through this journey as well. And how can I help? How can I do more that will really benefit others and take the learning? Because I almost feel like this has been almost a a test for me. How can I move forward from this in the manner that allows me to get the silver lining or something positive rather than focus on the negative side of things because I can't change that anyway. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's a really lovely thing to turn what's been a really difficult experience into something really positive around now offering specialist classes for people. And I know you ran a breast cancer workshop recently as well. So I think
yes,
those kind of things are really lovely to be able to offer because there's a lot of people who need that. And the more this kind of stuff is out there and people start looking for it because they know that it's there, that it becomes a win for everybody. So I'm just aware of time, and I just wanted to sort of ask us a final question as well. And this is valid for all teachers who work in sort of quite specialist areas, and I guess for all yoga teachers anyway. But in terms of thinking of your own mental and physical well-being, what do you have some strategies in place to take care of yourself so that you don't turn this into over giving and overwork? How are you finding
Mm.
that balance? And it's often a trial and error because you only find out where the edge is when you've fallen off it. But
Yeah, it's a really good question, very tricky for me because if you know me in a more kind of personal manner, you would know that I'm a very giving person and sometimes perhaps too much. I've recently had a chat with a friend who said, "You're very accommodating. You have to think about that." So I'm trying to take actions on it. And for years, I thought my element is fire because I'm quite explosive and very extrovert. But I have learned that it's probably water, which means that I have to work a little bit more on my boundaries. And how do I learn to say no? And how do I learn to really find ways to just have time for myself and not always give my time to others because I have that tendency. If you ask my parents, they will tell you that I always wanted to sort the world's problems. So,
yes.
yeah, so what I'm trying to do is now that I'm adjusting to this schedule of not having to work 24 hours a day with my corporate job because that was
Mm,
something that I was getting into at one point, and it really, really, I don't like to use the word mess up, but it really made things really difficult for me because of that tendency to be always available and always have time for everybody. So I'm trying to figure out what is the right way for me to go forward with because I'm doing a lot of classes which are everywhere in London, physical classes. So I have to travel, I have to find time um for really building my schedule in a way that allows me to have also personal time and not being constantly, like you said, teaching without actually having time for my practice. I do meditate, so that's one of the things I do. I love meditating, even if it's just for 5 minutes. I would just close my eyes and sit in a seated posture. I also love just doing a bit of yin even on my bed,
yeah.
just a couple of poses that allow me to get a little deeper into my body. And from time to time, not every day or not every week even, I try to have a stronger practice like a vinyasa or something that gets me a little bit going and sweaty and gets all of that energy out of my body. So finding a balance for me is really important. I try to also do other things outside of yoga, like I love
Yes.
singing and I sing in a choir and I try to dedicate some time to that as well. And also just being in nature and I love walking and just finding time to connect um with the world in my
Yeah.
own way. So
Yeah.
that's what I try to do. But believe me, it is difficult, especially now that I'm finding that, being working for yourself, it's completely different thing. So for me at the moment, I would say I'm in a transition period and finding the right balance and adjustments for what works for me.
Yeah, yeah, and it sounds like you've got some lovely things in place, and this is it's always a work in progress because each year, our lives are a little bit different. If you have children, they're a year older and their needs are different, and then different things might be going on with parents or partners and our own well-being. So it's always a work in progress, I think. You know, one of these days I'll nail it, but
Yes, exactly.
it's getting there. I nail it for about a week and then, you know, something changes. So, but
Yes.
being mindful of it and not, it sounds like you're being very mindful not to replicate the same work experience as your corporate job and just transfer that into being self-employed. It sounds like you're taking a very different approach, which is
Yes.
very healthy.
I hope so. We shall see.
Excellent. So for anybody who wants to find you, what's the best, easiest way to find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, so at the moment I am also working on a website, so I haven't got a website yet, but you can find me on Instagram as at Krastev Yoga. So my it's a play with my first and last name.
Lovely.
Um, and then the Live Yoga Teachers platform is a really good way to find me. I can send you a link for that if
We
that's something
will,
you would, yeah.
yeah, we will
Um,
post the links up under this video. So
Brilliant. Yeah,
click
so you
on
can
it.
find my online classes there. Um, and also you can just email me. That's also an option if you'd like to work with me. I will give the email address
We
as
will pop
well.
that up there. So yeah, we'll
Yeah,
put the links underneath so
yeah.
people can come find you. And you're based in South London, is that right?
I live in
And
South London.
online.
I live southeast. But I do have classes in different places across London. I work with More Yoga, so also you can find me on More Yoga as a yoga teacher if you Google on their website as well. That's also a place to find me at. I can send you all of these different things.
We'll
Yeah.
do that. Lovely. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure reconnecting with you. I know that we slightly changed the date because you had this wonderful holiday with your singing group, which I'm so happy to hear that you did. So that's definitely
Yes.
making time for you, which is really good. Um,
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so thank you so much for joining me. And we'll have to have another check in a year's time and see how things are looking then.
Yes, let's do that. I'd love that. And thank you so much, Jenny, for making the time for me and for inviting me to speak. I love sharing my experience with you and with the audience. And yeah, I really loved connecting with you as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.